You want to know something funny? The people who tried to destroy me ended up being destroyed themselves. Big time. And I had a front row seat to every single second of it. I never saw it coming. Not the fight, not the strength I didn't know I had, not the outcome that left me standing when everyone expected me to fold, but I'm getting ahead of myself. What I can tell you is this. Don't poke the mama bear. Because I learned something about myself when they tried to take my child away from me. I learned I can move mountains, I can fight an army alone, I can burn the whole thing down with nothing but exhaustion and a paper trail. My name is Megan, and this is the story of how I did everything a good woman isn't supposed to do. Fought back, refused to break, and walked out of a courtroom with my daughter and my dignity, while the people who tried to take both lost nearly everything they had. But before we get to that part, imagine finishing your second job at 1 a.m. 8 hours on a headset troubleshooting problems for strangers who were frustrated before you even said hello. Your feet are past hurting. Your voice is gone. You haven't eaten a real meal since the granola bar you inhaled in the parking lot between jobs. You are so tired that tired doesn't even feel like the right word anymore. But you keep going, because tomorrow morning the alarm goes off at 5 and the first job starts at 8, and there is no such thing as a day off when $120,000 worth of someone else's debt doesn't pay itself. All you want, the only thing in the world you want, is to walk through your front door, drink a glass of water, and sleep for 4 hours before you do it all over again. That was me, every single night. I pushed open the front door quietly the way I always did, slipped off my shoes, set my bag down. The house was dark and still. Landon and Calista would be asleep. Everything was exactly the way it always was. I walked to the kitchen to get my glass of water, and that's when I saw it. A piece of paper on the counter, folded once. My name written on the outside in handwriting I had known for years. I unfolded it. Megan, I want a divorce. I'm taking Calista. You'll hear from my lawyer. I read it once, twice, 3 times, and somewhere between the second and third read, every drop of exhaustion drained out of my body and was replaced by something cold and absolute. I didn't care about the divorce. I want you to understand that. I did not care that my husband wanted to leave. That part I could survive. But Calista, my baby. I was down the hall before I finished the thought. Her bed was empty, made too neatly. Her one-eyed stuffed rabbit was gone. Her shoes that always sat crooked by the door, gone. The drawings she kept tucked in the corner of her mirror, gone. I was in my car before I knew I had grabbed my keys. I drove to my in-laws' house the way I had 100 times before, turned onto their street and hit my brakes. The driveway was empty. The curtains were drawn and planted in the middle of their front lawn like it had been waiting specifically for me, a for sale sign. A for sale sign doesn't happen overnight. That is paperwork, phone calls, months of planning while I was at work, while I was making sure everyone had food and clean clothes and a roof I was paying for. They were planning this. I drove to the police station, still in my work clothes, ID badge still around my neck, eyes so swollen I could barely see the road. The officer explained gently that without a custody order, what Landon did was not legally considered abduction. He was the father. He had equal rights. She offered to send a wellness check to confirm Calista was safe. I gave her the address from our shared location app. Landon hadn't turned it off. Another city. Hours away. I walked back to my car and fell apart completely. Hands over my face. The kind of crying that has no sound because it comes from somewhere too deep for noise. Then I stopped, wiped my face, and opened my notes app. Lawyer, emergency custody, document everything. The note, the location, the for sale sign. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table until the sun came up, staring at a glass of water I never drank. When 9 a.m. came, I started calling lawyers. Still in yesterday's clothes, eyes barely open. I called 4 offices. 2 didn't answer. 1 put me on hold for 15 minutes and never came back. The 4th gave me an appointment for 2 in the afternoon. I called in sick to both jobs for the first time in 3 years. I still hadn't slept. I still hadn't eaten. But I had an appointment and I had a list, and that was enough to keep moving. Because I had a daughter to get back. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand how I ended up there in the first place. My father, Larry, was the best man I ever knew. He worked 2 jobs his entire life, never complained, and paid off our family home before he died at 48 years old. 48. I used to tell myself it was just his time. But the older I get, especially on the nights when I drag myself through the front door at 2 in the morning and caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, I think his body just got tired. The way things get tired when they have been asked to give everything for too long, and nobody ever thought to ask what was left for him. I used to wonder sometimes on the long drives home between jobs if that was where I was headed too, worn down to nothing before 50. I would think about Calista asleep in her room and tell myself no. Tell myself I would stop before it got that far. I just hadn't figured out when stopping was allowed yet. My mother Dorothy had me when she was 18 and considered that fact the central sacrifice of her existence. She was 53 now, living alone in the Phoenix home my father paid off completely before he died. She collected his Social Security survivor benefits every month. She had his life insurance too, though most of that was gone. Vacations, expensive taste, things she felt she deserved after years of being provided for. And she still called me every few weeks with an emergency. Her car, her light bill, her medication. I knew the house was paid off. I knew she wasn't desperate. I sent the money anyway because I was too exhausted to carry the weight of her guilt on top of everything else. It was easier to transfer $300 than to spend emotional energy I didn't have on an argument I knew I would lose. Dorothy had perfected that calculation over decades. She learned it on my father first. Then there was Landon. I met him in my mid-20s, married him, believed in him the way you believe in someone when you are young enough to confuse potential with character. When his business collapsed after exactly 1 year and left us with $120,000 in debt, I didn't leave. I picked up a second job instead. My days looked like this. Up at 5 in the morning. Get Calista ready for school. Clerk job 8 to 4. Drive home, make sure my family had a hot meal. Call center shift 5 in the evening to 1 in the morning, 3 to 4 hours of sleep. Repeat. Every single day. On weekends, I meal prepped so Calista would never open the refrigerator and find it empty. Calista was 8 years old and she had never once gone to bed hungry. That was the thing I held on to. Landon stayed home to recharge. His words. When I asked him, carefully, the way you ask someone you've learned to walk on eggshells around, if he could find even a part-time job to help, he looked at me like I had personally betrayed him. You don't believe in me, he said. You're killing my motivation, Megan. So I apologized. I know. His parents, Henry and Betty, had opinions about me they wore openly and without apology. To them, I was the absent wife. Never home, never enough. They never asked why I worked 2 jobs. They never acknowledged the debt their son created. They simply decided I was the problem and never revisited that conclusion. Then Henry got hurt at work. A piece of equipment that should have been shut down. An injury so severe it nearly cost him his entire arm and kept him hospitalized for weeks. I knew about the accident. I even helped cover some of his legal fees because that is what family does, or at least that is what I believed family meant. What I didn't know was the outcome. I was too busy working to follow up. Henry's lawsuit settled. I found that out much later, from a friend, not from them. What I found out first was that the people I had been holding together with both hands had been sitting around a table without me, planning, spending, and sharpening a knife with my name on it. I showed up to Paula Caldwell's office at 2 in the afternoon, still wearing the same clothes I had on when I found that note. I had not slept. I had not eaten. My eyes were so swollen, the receptionist looked up and immediately looked back down. I did not care. Paula Caldwell had sharp eyes and the kind of calm that told you she had seen worse than me sitting across her desk. She listened. She took notes. She asked precise questions and waited for precise answers. I told her everything. When I got home, I went straight to the home office. The desk I bought, the printer and scanner I bought for Landon when he started his business. He had taken a lot of things when he left, but he hadn't taken those. I opened my laptop, a thin layer of dust on the keyboard. I hadn't touched it since I picked up the second job. I wiped it off and got to work. Bank statements, loan documents, bills in my name, receipts, every piece of paper that told the story of who had actually been holding this family together. Scanned everything. Emailed it all to Paula before the sun went down. That morning before the appointment, I had called my mother. No answer. I called again. No answer. Sent 3 text messages. Unread. I told myself she just needed space, that she was upset and didn't know what to say. I told myself that because the alternative hadn't occurred to me yet. That evening, I pulled up the location app, opened the address in Maps. The neighborhood was not modest. It was the kind with a gate at the entrance and manicured lawns and houses that didn't appear on Zillow under $1 million. Scottsdale. Henry and Betty had never had money, so what were they doing there? I called Sammy. Sammy had been friends with both me and Landon for years. He picked up on the second ring. "Sammy," I said, "Henry and Betty, what do you know?" There was a pause. "Megan," he said slowly. "You haven't heard?" He told me everything. Henry's lawsuit had settled for $5 million. After taxes and legal fees, they walked away with close to $3 million. The new house in Scottsdale, the new cars, all of it. I sat very still. I thought about the legal fees I helped cover. Every dollar I stretched in that direction while paying Landon's debt and sending Dorothy her emergency money and keeping the lights on. $3 million, and nobody told me. Sammy sensed something was wrong the way Sammy always did. "Hey," he said quietly, "what's going on?" So I told him. Everything. The note, Calista, the for sale sign, the police station, the location pin in a neighborhood I now understood perfectly. The line went silent for a moment. "That is so messed up," he said, simply. The way someone says something that needs no elaboration. "What are you going to do?" he asked. And I said it out loud for the first time. "I'm going after them, Sammy. All of them. I'm getting my daughter back, whatever it takes." He didn't hesitate. "Tell me what you need," he said. "I will show up and tell anyone who asks exactly what I watched you do for that family for years. We all will." I thanked him and hung up. Then I called Paula immediately. "I need you to know something," I said the moment she answered. "They have money, a lot of it, and I think they have been planning this for a long time." Paula went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. "Forward me everything," she said, "and start thinking carefully about who else around them might have recently come into unexpected money." That question. That's where everything started unraveling for them. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked at my own finances. Just mine. Without Landon's debt sitting on top of everything like a boulder I had been slowly crushed under. Without his loan payments. Without his credit card minimums. Without the constant bleeding of money toward a hole that never got smaller. Just my 2 incomes. My bills. My life. I applied for a personal loan online to cover Paula's retainer. $40,000. Approved. I stared at that word for a long time. Approved. Not because I had more money than before, but because for the first time what I earned was finally enough. Because I had stopped carrying someone else's weight. Landon had taken my daughter, but he had accidentally given me back my financial footing. I don't think that's what he intended, but I'll take it. I tried Dorothy again before I went to bed. Still nothing. I cried myself to sleep without realizing it. Woke up the next morning with eyes swollen shut, a headache sitting behind my forehead like something immovable, and a stomach that had given up asking politely for food. I reached for my phone. I called my mother again. I know how that sounds. After everything. But I just wanted my mom. Not the version that called with emergencies, not the version that guilted and performed. Just my mother. Her voice. Her arms. The thing you reach for when everything falls apart, regardless of how complicated the history is. Voicemail. Her text sat unread. I put the phone down and went to stand in front of the refrigerator full of meal prep I had made for a family that was no longer there. I ate standing at the counter. Then I called Paula, because I had a daughter to get back and nobody was coming to help me do it. A few days later, the papers arrived. Divorce filing, custody petition. Delivered to my door like a package I never ordered. Paula walked me through it carefully. The petition painted a picture of a mother who was chronically absent, emotionally unavailable, never home. A child essentially raised by her devoted father while the mother prioritized work over family. I almost laughed. "There's something else," Paula said. "They have witnesses, people willing to testify on their behalf." She read me the list. The neighbor, The woman from Calista's school. Henry. Betty. And then she said a name that made the room go quiet around me. Dorothy. My mother. I made Paula repeat it. She did. I thought about every unanswered call, every unread text, the way she had gone completely silent since the night I found that note. She hadn't been grieving. She had been preparing. Megan, Paula said carefully, is there anything I should know about your relationship with your mother? I thought about the paid-off house, the emergency calls, the money transferred from an account that had no business being touched. Larry working 2 jobs until his body gave out at 48, while Dorothy spent his life insurance on vacations and expensive taste. Yes, I said quietly. There is quite a lot you should know. Paula listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Good, she said, because everything you just told me is exactly what we're going to use. Paula had already been working since our first meeting. She had subpoenaed the bank accounts of every single witness on their list the moment she understood what $3 million and a coordinated plan actually looked like. Every single one. And what she found told a story that Landon's expensive lawyers were completely unprepared for. I had never been inside a courtroom before. I had imagined it would feel dramatic. It didn't. It was just a cold room with fluorescent lights and wooden benches and people who had seen too much of human nature to be surprised by any of it. Paula sat beside me, composed, a thick folder in front of her representing weeks of work and every document I had scanned on a dusty laptop the morning after my world fell apart. Landon sat across the room with his legal team. Expensive suits, confident posture. The kind of confidence that comes from believing your father's money makes you untouchable. Henry and Betty sat behind him, Betty's hands folded neatly in her lap, a new blazer I had never seen before, hair freshly done. She looked like a woman who had recently discovered what a good salon felt like and intended to keep going. Henry sat beside her in a collared shirt that still had the packaging crease in it. They looked like concerned grandparents. They had practiced looking like concerned grandparents. I kept my face still. I had learned stillness from years of being too tired to react. Landon's lawyer laid out their case with the smooth confidence of someone paid very well to make lies sound reasonable. Chronically absent mother. Emotionally unavailable. A child essentially raised by her devoted father while the mother prioritized work over family. I wrote one word on my notepad, receipts, and underlined it twice. They called their witnesses. The neighbor came first. She took the stand with the practiced concern of a woman who had rehearsed this. She testified that I was rarely home, that Calista was often alone with her father, that she had concerns about the stability of the home environment. Paula let her finish every word. Then she stood up. Paula Caldwell was 5 feet 2 inches tall. The first thing you noticed was how small she was. Then she opened her mouth and every thought you had about her size disappeared completely. She didn't need a microphone. She was the microphone. "Ma'am," Paula said pleasantly, approaching the witness with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How many times have you personally spoken with my client?" The neighbor shifted slightly. "A few times. We've had conversations." "How many times?" Paula repeated. Still pleasant. Completely immovable. 2 or 3 times, maybe. 2 or 3 times, Paula said. She opened her folder and produced a document. "And yet you feel confident testifying about the stability of her home environment based on 2 or 3 conversations." The neighbor opened her mouth. Paula was already moving. "Let me show you something. Can you tell the court what this is?" The neighbor looked at it. Her face changed. "That appears to be a bank statement," she said carefully. "Your bank statement," Paula said. "Specifically the deposit made to your account 18 days before today's hearing, from an account belonging to Henry and Betty." She paused. "The grandparents of the child you are here today testifying about." The courtroom shifted. Landon's lawyer was on his feet. The judge overruled him before he finished the objection. Paula looked at the neighbor pleasantly. "So your deep concern for Calista's well-being arrived approximately 18 days after receiving this payment. Is that correct?" The neighbor looked at Landon's table. Landon's lawyer looked at his own table. "Yes or no, please," Paula said. The silence was its own answer. The school witness was next. Different face. Same story. Paula established her testimony carefully, then produced her bank records with the same quiet efficiency of someone laying cards on a table they already knew they had won. Another deposit, same source, different amount, same outcome. By the time Paula sat back down, Landon's lawyer had run out of objections, and the judge was watching the proceedings with an expression that made very clear she understood exactly what she was looking at. A purchased case, built with Henry's settlement money, brick by paid brick. Then Paula called our witnesses. Sammy walked to that stand like a man who had been waiting years for someone to finally ask him the right questions. Paula kept it simple. "What did you observe about Megan during the marriage?" she asked. "She worked constantly," Sammy said. "He wasn't performing. He was just telling the truth the way people tell the truth when they don't have anything to hide. 2 jobs. I don't think I saw her once without bags under her eyes. She was always exhausted, but she always showed up, always." "And Landon?" Landon's lawyer objected. Overruled. Sammy looked at Landon across that courtroom. "Landon stayed home," he said simply. "We all knew it, his friends, our whole group. We watched Megan carry everything while he figured himself out. Most of us stopped spending time with him because we couldn't watch it and say nothing." 2 of Landon's former friends followed. Different words. Same story. They had watched. They knew. And when it came down to it, they chose the right side. Landon stared at the table in front of him. The confidence he had walked in with was gone. Then Paula called him to the stand. He answered his own lawyer's questions smoothly enough. Devoted father, present parent, a man who simply wanted what was best for his daughter. Then Paula stood up. She walked toward him slowly. No folder this time. No documents in her hand. Just 5 feet 2 inches of absolute intention. "Mr. Landon," she said pleasantly, "let's talk about the $120,000. He blinked. "The business loans, the credit cards, the debt you accumulated and left for your wife to service while you stayed home. That $120,000. His lawyer objected. Overruled. "How much of that debt did you personally pay down during your marriage?" Paula asked. Landon straightened slightly. "I contributed in other ways. I was present for Calista. "That wasn't my question," Paula said. Her voice hadn't changed in pitch or volume. It never did. She didn't need volume. "How much of your own debt did you personally pay down while your wife woke up at 5 in the morning and came home at 1 the following morning? While she meal prepped on weekends so your daughter had food for the week? While she sent money to her mother and helped pay your father's legal fees and kept the lights on and the refrigerator full?" She tilted her head slightly. "How much?" The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard in my life. Paula let it stretch until it filled every corner of that room. Then she turned to the judge with the expression of a woman who had made her point completely and said she had no further questions. She walked back to our table and sat down beside me. "You are terrifying," I whispered. The corner of her mouth moved. Almost a smile. "We're not done yet," she said quietly. Then they called Dorothy. My mother walked to the stand with the same unhurried confidence she had carried into the room. She smoothed her blouse, sat down, folded her hands. She didn't look at me. Landon's lawyer led her through her testimony gently. She was good, I'll give her that. The wobble in her voice was perfectly calibrated, the pauses in exactly the right places. She told the court I was never present, that I called her crying saying I couldn't cope, that Calista would ask for me and I simply wasn't there. That the child was essentially being raised by Landon. I recognized every single word. I knew exactly when I had said them. Sitting on a bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, whispering so I wouldn't wake Calista because it was the only private space I could find in my own home. "Mom, I'm so tired. I don't know how much longer I can do this." A confession made in the dark to the one person I thought was safe turned into testimony. I put my hands flat on the table in front of me and kept them very still. Then Paula stood up. She approached my mother the same way she had approached every other witness, pleasant, unhurried, like someone taking a Sunday walk who happened to be carrying a sledgehammer. "Miss Dorothy," she began, "you love your daughter." It wasn't a question. My mother answered it like one anyway. "She's my child. Of course I do." "Of course," Paula said warmly. "And as her loving mother, you were aware that she worked 2 jobs, 8 in the morning until 1 the following morning. Yes?" She worked a lot. 2 jobs, Paula said. Gentle correction. 8 to 4 as a clerk, 5 in the evening to 1 in the morning at a call center. Yes? Yes. And you were aware she was doing this to service her husband's debt of $120,000. I knew about the debt. Yes or no, please? Dorothy's jaw tightened slightly. Yes. And during this period, Paula continued, you called your daughter regularly requesting financial assistance. We had a close relationship. I called her. I asked about the financial assistance, Miss Dorothy. You called requesting money, regularly. Yes? A pause. Occasionally. Paula opened her folder. I have bank records showing transfers from your daughter's account to yours occurring every 3 to 4 weeks over a period of 4 years. She looked up. Does occasionally feel like the right word to you? Dorothy said nothing. Now, you own your home, correct? Yes. Mortgage-free, fully paid, left to you by your late husband, Larry. Something crossed Dorothy's face too quickly to name. Yes, she said quietly. So when you called your daughter requesting emergency financial assistance, Paula paused just long enough. There was no mortgage, no rent, no housing payment of any kind. There are other expenses. Yes or no, please? The courtroom was absolutely silent. No mortgage, Dorothy said. The words came out like something being pulled from her against her will. Thank you, Paula said. She turned another page. Now, you are listed as a witness for the petitioner, meaning you are here today to support Mr. Landon's custody claim against your own daughter. I'm here for Calista, Dorothy said, the rehearsed line, delivered on cue. For Calista, Paula repeated, not for the $50,000. Landon's lawyer was on his feet immediately. Paula was already turning to the judge with her folder open. She produced the document she had been holding in reserve since the very beginning. A bank record, a transfer, $50,000, from Henry and Betty's account to Dorothy's account, dated 6 weeks before this hearing. The judge reviewed it, admitted it into evidence, overruled the objection. Paula turned back to my mother. Dorothy had gone the color of someone who had just understood something too late. $50,000, Paula said quietly, deposited into your account by the family of the man you are supporting against your own daughter. The daughter who sent you money every few weeks for years, while working 2 jobs on 3 hours of sleep while your house sat paid off and your hand stayed out. My mother opened her mouth. Ms. Dorothy, Paula said, I have everything. Every transfer, every bank record, every receipt. I strongly suggest that whatever comes out of your mouth next is the truth. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. And then my mother's shoulders dropped. All at once, completely. The performance left her body like air leaving a balloon, and what remained was just a 53-year-old woman who had made a decision she couldn't unmake, sitting in a courtroom that had just watched her make it. And she wept, not quietly, not with dignity. She wept the way people weep when the thing they were pretending wasn't real finally becomes real, loud and uncontrolled and filling that courtroom completely. The bailiff stepped forward, and between the sobs in a voice that was nothing like the composed witness who had walked up to that stand, my mother told the truth. Landon called her, said it would be better for Calista, said he would make it worth her while, $100,000, half up front, half after the ruling. She said yes. She hadn't even been paid in full yet. She had sold her daughter on an installment plan, and now she was sitting in a courtroom sobbing while the second half of that money evaporated in real time. The bailiff escorted her out. I watched her go. I had spent my entire life being moved by my mother's tears, reaching for her, softening, sending the money, making the call, showing up. I did not move. I did not reach. I turned back to face the front of that courtroom, and I did not look in her direction again. Paula closed her folder. No further questions, she said. Then Sandra, the guardian ad litem appointed to represent Callista's best interests, presented her report. She had met with Calista privately. No lawyers, no parents, no pressure. Just a quiet room and simple questions asked to an 8-year-old who had been watching everything her whole life and remembering all of it. Sandra read from her report. Calista said she wanted her mommy. She said Daddy was always on his laptop and didn't really talk to her. She said Mommy was always tired but always tried. 3 sentences from an 8-year-old. And just like that, the entire carefully constructed case against me collapsed completely. The judge looked at Landon. Then she looked at Paula. Then she looked at Henry and Betty sitting behind their son. And when she spoke, she did not sound like a woman delivering a routine ruling. She sounded like a woman who had seen the full picture and wanted everyone in that room to know it. She spoke about the integrity of her courtroom, about paid witnesses and coordinated schemes, about a child who deserved better from every adult in that room except one. And then she looked at me, and she awarded me full custody of Calista. I felt Paula's hand cover mine briefly under the table. I kept my face still. I was not done yet, because 2 weeks later we were back in that same courtroom, this time for the civil suit. Paula stood before the judge and laid out every claim methodically. The legal fees I had contributed toward Henry's lawsuit, the marital debt I had carried alone for years, the attorney fees for this case, the emotional distress damages, the punitive damages for conduct so deliberately cruel the court needed to make an example of it, the unjust enrichment, the child support, every number, every document, every receipt I had kept for years without knowing one day they would be the thing that saved me. And then the judge ruled. She awarded me reimbursement for every dollar I had quietly contributed toward Henry's legal fees. She awarded me reimbursement for the marital debt I had overpaid alone. She awarded me full attorney fees. She awarded me emotional distress damages. And then she announced the punitive damages. The number landed in that courtroom like something physical. I heard Betty make a sound behind me that I had never heard from a human being before. Not crying, not gasping, something between the two. The sound of a person watching a life they had barely started living disappear in real time. I turned to look at her. I couldn't help it. Betty, who had sat in that first hearing with her hands folded and her new blazer and her freshly done hair looking like a woman who had finally arrived somewhere, was gripping Henry's arm with both hands. Her face had collapsed completely. The composed grandmother was gone. What was left was a woman doing the math in her head and not surviving the answer. Henry sat perfectly still beside her, staring straight ahead. The color had left his face entirely. And Landon? Landon had his elbows on the table and his face in his hands. The confident man who had left a folded note on my kitchen counter and driven away with my daughter in the middle of the night had his face in his hands. Then the judge announced the child support, $4,000 a month, until Calista turned 18. Betty's grip on Henry's arm tightened so hard I could see her knuckles from where I was sitting, and then she wailed, the same way Dorothy had wailed when Paula closed that folder. Loud, uncontrolled, filling the courtroom completely. Except Dorothy had wailed because she got caught. Betty was wailing because she was doing the math. The bailiff moved toward her. By the time the judge finished speaking, the total civil damages awarded to me came to just over $2.5 million. I sat very still. Paula leaned toward me. "Breathe," she said quietly. I exhaled. I thought about the granola bar I ate in a parking lot between jobs because I didn't have time for a real meal. I thought about the loan application I filled out alone at my kitchen table on no sleep. I thought about the folded note. I thought about Larry. I kept my face still until we walked out of that courthouse into the afternoon sun and Paula to shake my hand, and I took one look at her face and started crying right there on the courthouse steps like I had not cried since the parking lot of that police station on the worst night of my life. Paula handed me a tissue from her pocket without saying anything, which was exactly right. Some things don't need words. Henry and Betty's settlement money didn't survive their own greed. Between the Scottsdale house, the new cars, the paid witnesses, the expensive lawyers, and a civil judgment they never saw coming, it was gone faster than it arrived. The house went on the market before Betty had even finished choosing the paint colors for the living room. There were still swatches taped to the hallway wall when the moving trucks came. No Scottsdale, no pool, no good salon, just broke again, except this time with criminal charges pending. Henry and Betty were referred for criminal prosecution on 3 counts of witness tampering. Dorothy was referred for perjury. The second half of her $100,000 never came. She tried to reach me after everything. Calls, texts. I heard she showed up at the old house before she realized I had moved. I found a condo, 4th floor. A building with a security desk in the lobby and a buzzer system on the front door. You cannot just walk up and knock, you have to be let in. Dorothy found the building eventually. She always finds a way. She went to the security desk in the lobby, told them it was an emergency. The guard called up to my unit. I looked at the intercom screen. I went back to unpacking boxes. Some emergencies can wait. Some emergencies were never emergencies at all. As for Landon, the court granted him supervised visitation. Specific days, specific times, a neutral third party present at every visit. No overnights. He went from the man who was going to take my daughter and start over to a man who schedules time with her in a neutral location while someone takes notes. I hope the laptop was worth it. Calista slept with her one-eyed rabbit the first night in the new condo, and I sat on the edge of her bed long after she fell asleep just watching her breathe. She woke up halfway and saw me there and smiled. "You're home, Mommy," she said. "I'm home, baby," I said. She was asleep again in 30 seconds. I thought about Larry, about the road he walked until his body simply stopped. I used to wonder if I was heading the same way. I wasn't. No second job, no debt that wasn't mine. No guilt transfers, no performance to maintain for people who never really loved me. Just this room. This child, this quiet. My name is Megan. I kept every single receipt. They thought exhaustion meant weakness. They were wrong. And that's our story for today. If this had you gripping your phone, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I want to know which moment got you the most. Thank you for listening. This is Melodic Vengeance. See you on the next one. Take care.
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to follow for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.